Okay, it's 12. Let's get started. Ivana, as I kind of give a brief intro, can you please keep an eye on people in the waiting room? Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Arpana Vania. I'm the chair of omics. We are so excited to start this webinar series. It's called Images of Success, Women in Metabolomics. We have four women in metabolomics and different omicses here with us to talk to us about their career and their journey. So I'm very excited to have them. Ivana is going to be our moderator. So with that, I'll hand off the webinar to her, the mic to her. Thanks.
Thanks, Arpana. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And yeah, as Arpana mentioned in the intro, we have a series of workshops in WOMICS events where we kind of try to connect, industry professionals or academia professionals in the field of omics and connect them to a, ever-growing field of young researchers in that same field. And we are trying to do a community outreach by helping and sharing struggles, great stuff, difficulties, successes that we have had over the years. And today's event is something very close to me, and that's why I titled it From Academia to Industry, because I personally have had a great time in academia. I enjoyed it early. At the same time, I kind of knew it wasn't the career path I wanted to follow. And I always kind of knew I would really like, I would thrive in industrial setting. Today's kind of, today's presentation or today's webinar is some of the people who think or who thought alike, like I have. And it is my great pleasure today to introduce you to four just great, outstanding professionals in the field of omics. Jessie Choi is here with us, Margaret Donovan, Megan Showalter, and Mona Elbadawi Sidhu. And when we were thinking about putting this list of panelists together, is we kind of wanted to have a diverse, backgrounds of these professionals, and we feel like we have achieved that. We didn't want, everybody to be a data scientist or everybody to be, senior chemist or something. So it's really nice today that we have, a senior chemist, bioinformatician, somebody in the as a strategic account management, which something I'm looking forward to hearing about. It's very distant from what I do, for example. So I'm excited about that. And again, senior management and the head lab. So thank you to our speakers who have taken this hour to share their experiences with us. And we have put a just very informal agenda here together. It's, we're not going to be following this to the T, but just kind of to give you an overview of how today's going to go. And we will have introductory few minutes of every speaker where they are going to share, what they do right now, what they did in the past, how they made, a small jump from a big jump from academia to industry. When we go through introductions of all of our speakers, we will open the floor for all the questions and panel discussion. And this is kind of where we would really, really like to engage all of our, WOMICS and everybody who's not WOMICS communities who's here today, to really actively participate and ask the question. There are no wrong questions. Everything you ever wanted to know, you can really freely ask. And the way we can communicate today is through a chat box. So you can either, post a question if you don't want to speak, or you can, of course, unmute yourself and just ask a question. Either way is fine, and all the questions are welcome. And our speakers are also looking forward to, to sharing their experiences with you. That being said, I would like to introduce you to, all the members of omics. Arpana is our director, a captain of omics, if you will. She has brought us all together not that long ago, actually, but we've been very busy, and we've been, trying to stay busy. And we have Candice, who is also a part of omics, Isin, myself, Christina, Susan, Alice, Stephanie, and Mariam. And we all do metabolomics, and some of us are in industry, some of us are in research, some of us are in independent organizations. So there's a mix, I would say, of all of the backgrounds. And when Arpana kind of got us together and when we started to figure out how we want to represent ourselves and what do we want to do, is we really want to promote professional development and engagement of women in metabolomics. And we are trying to provide a community, and open community, providing opportunities for networking and mentorship, assisting in any really way. It doesn't have to be just networking and mentorship. It's sometimes it's just to hear somebody out, and sometimes it's to share the experiences and to literally help in data analysis or something like this. So in its essence, omics is here to advance, women in metabolomics. And we have, of course, an X in the women in metabolomics. And it's in order to explicitly welcome trans women, trans feminine, gender fluid, and non-binary participants without any, of course, discrimination. So this is kind of who we are and what we are trying to do here. And that being said, I would like to again welcome everybody today, and I would like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and to share a little bit of backstory. And I would like to start with Jessie. Jessie, maybe do you want to start?
Yeah, so I'm Jessie Ochoa. I'm a senior chemist at Brightseed. And how I got from academia to here. So I did my undergraduate at UC Irvine, which was a great experience. I had a lot of wonderful mentors, which is going to be kind of consistent as I tell you my background. They helped me get into, science, into research labs. I had a postdoc in the undergraduate research lab that I was working in. Totally helped me redo my resume, which got me into industry. So I landed a job before finals week, I think only because of like the work that mentor did to help get my resume where it needed to be. Working in industry was great. I did feel like I plateaued though with a bachelor, that I could only do so much and that I wasn't getting challenged the way that I wanted to be challenged with a bachelor. So I went to UC Santa Cruz, where I joined the Linnington Lab. And so there we were doing natural products chemistry, and we're focused on using new tools to apply to new sources of natural products in order to drive drug discovery, with the idea that if you look in the same place with the same tools, you're always going to find the same chemistry. So with metabolomics, different sequencing tools, as well as high content imaging in order to apply that to a novel source, which was isolating different microbial communities from marine mammal digestive tracts in order to identify different small molecules that had various health benefits that might be relevant to the marine mammals. While I was at UC Santa Cruz, not without challenges. So my PI, my entire lab, the mass spec, all the equipment moved to Canada during my 4th year, which was pretty exciting for me. But there were some like good things that happened from that. So if I think back from the first 6 weeks from when I joined that lab, I sat right next to Laura Sanchez, which was an exiting graduate student at the time. She's also a stellar metabolomics scientist as well. And when that happened, she called Phil Cruz, which was another professor who was actually, he wasn't taking graduate students and wasn't as present in UC Santa Cruz. And he said, hey, she said, hey, watch out for Jessie, like keep an eye out for her. And it's actually through Phil Cruz that I got the job at Brightseed. And so it was challenging, it was tough, but kind of through that network, you never know who you're gonna sit next to or what's gonna happen and where that's gonna get you to where you need to be. And so that got me the job call with Brightseed, and then also with Laura Sanchez, and then a big group, like they all helped me even get through like negotiating the job, contract, salary, everything. So I've had like a great support system there, which has been really great. And then at Brightseed, so it was a very small startup when I started. So I was the first employee there. So it was me and 3 founders, which meant that I started with an empty lab. So did everything from, you know, purchasing equipment, setting up a lab, making like foundational protocols, pipelines for untargeted, targeted analysis, and then help develop and find our first micronutrient, which we're now scaling up into production for metabolic health. And so all of that has been like with great resources, starting with graduate students, as well as I also have external mentors, both within my company and outside of the company in industry and academia, that's gotten me to this job here, which I'm very excited to be at.
Thank you so much, Jessie, for sharing a little bit of your journey with all of us. I have personally recognized myself in many aspects of your story. So thanks a lot for sharing that. I would like to ask our second speaker, Margaret. Very excited to hear about your journey, Margaret. She's a bioinformatician at SEER, very young and thriving startup. Is it even a startup? I'm not sure. It's a public now.
I consider us a startup, but we did go public. We did go public at the end of last year. So I don't know. We're kind of in that transition phase.
Yeah, that's very exciting, and congratulations for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, super exciting time. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to talk today. Yeah, Margaret, bioinformatician at SEER. When I was an undergrad and through graduate school, having spaces to talk science and careers was always super important to me. So I'm actually really excited to have a new space to talk this out. And it's kind of fun to be on the other side, even though I'm very close. You know, I just graduated, I guess, a year ago, but and I've only been working for a short period of time, but it's fun to have this space to talk. But yes, very similar to Jessie, my transition, or the way I was thinking about this transition from academia to industry, actually started back in when I was an undergrad at UC Santa Cruz, where I was working on my bachelor's in bioengineering. So during my undergrad, I was always trying to basically gain as many experience as possible to try to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I did internships, I worked in a research lab, I was a lab technician at a local biotech. And by the time I finished my undergrad, I knew I really loved research, and I thought I might have wanted to go to grad school, but I wasn't quite ready for that leap yet. So after finishing UC Santa Cruz, my bachelor's, I went on to work at Illumina in San Diego as a bioinformatics intern and later a research associate in the protein engineering group. And it was actually a super valuable experience for me because I was able to actually basically run experiments end to end. I was doing the wet lab work, and then I was also doing the bioinformatics work. And I think I learned a couple of things from that experience. I think first I learned I didn't love wet lab, wasn't very good at it, but I did love bioinformatics. But really what I started to understand was that I lacked kind of the scientific thinking. I knew I wanted to drive the experiments, but I didn't. So I liked to perform the experiments, but I wanted to drive them. I really wanted to know, how do I design them? What questions am I asking? And how do I solve them, basically? And I also learned that just looking at the people around me, that, you know, it was very similar to what Jessie said. I kind of felt like at a certain point, you know, it was hard to kind of break through to the next step without having an advanced degree. So with encouragement from my mentor at Illumina, he encouraged me to apply for graduate school. And I guess I couldn't leave San Diego, and I decided to go to UC San Diego to work on my PhD in bioinformatics and their bioinformatics and systems biology program, where I worked on my thesis with Dr. Kelly Frazier, where I was studying the cellular and molecular differences in fetal tissues. And from the very beginning, she and I were, be honest with each other about what my goals were, what I wanted to do with my career. And I was pretty set on returning to industry because, having come from Illumina and having had limited experience in my undergrad in industry, I knew I loved the pace, and I knew I loved the fact that, we were working on products that were going to help people maybe more quickly than academia was. So she was very supportive of, throughout my PhD, kind of pursuing these outside, resources and organizations where we did have these conversations about what existed beyond academia. So after I defended, I guess that was December of 2019, led us to 2020, which of course was a challenging year for everyone. But I'm really grateful that companies were still looking for bioinformatics scientists. And I was able to land an incredible role at Seer in June of 2020, which was a really cool opportunity for me because a lot of my PhD work was thinking about genetics and the transcriptome and its role in disease. But what Seer is telling us is kind of the next step forward by looking at proteomics, which is getting me actually closer to disease. So now as a bioinformatics scientist at Seer thinking about proteomics, my job is actually building out our biological insight. So we're largely a device company, but what I'm doing is I'm actually bridging this gap between this device that we've built and what can we do, what can we learn using it? And that's not to say that it didn't come with its own challenges. Learning the technology and actually transitioning between academia and industry was actually a whole new ballgame for me. New science that was very challenging, just an entirely new space for me, as well as adapting to the changes in dynamics, kind of the way you interact with people, the way you email, the way you talk to people in academia versus industry was brand new for me. But all that aside, my time at Seer has been super fun. I joined when there was, I guess I was like the 53rd employee or something. And, after 6 months, I got to celebrate with everyone our IPO. And beyond that, beyond just doing the bioinformatics, actually working in this, industrial but startup space, it's been super fun because not only am I doing bioinformatics, I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything. I'm talking to people cross spaces. I'm talking to marketing. I'm talking to assay development. I'm talking to software. And more recently, I've been participating and thinking about what does the company look like next year? What does it look like in 3 years? What does it look like in 5 years? And it's been a very gratifying and fun experience to jump from academia, which really built my foundation in science, and now I'm actually getting to use it to do fun things.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Margaret, for sharing this with us. I did not know you went from Illumina to Seer. That's like a really, really rich already, working background. And to add to that, I have a former colleague working at Seer, and I know that you guys are doing some exciting research there as well. And you've published a Nature paper in, about nanoparticles and their application in proteomics. So anybody who's attending and is, researching that type of area, please find their paper. It's very exciting. Thanks again, Margaret.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next speaker is somebody I'm very excited to have here. All of these speakers, obviously, I'm excited about, but this one is, she's my former colleague, Megan Showalter, and she was a great scientist in the field lab and in another lab before that, but then she decided to take a turn, and she joined the business team at Metabolomics. So I'm very excited to have you here, Megan. Please share some of your journey with us and how you, just tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, thanks for the nice introduction, Ivana. I really miss working with you, and I have a few of my former colleagues here, and it's kind of, I think, building on what the other speakers have said, it is your network. It's who you know, and these kind of people that you meet, and you never really realize, like, I wouldn't have imagined as we're all kind of lining up in our cubicles, this is kind of where we would be. So it's fun to kind of see how the future goes. I used to sit by Mona and Arpana, so, and Ivana was in the bioinformatics side. So yeah, I really, I definitely took a hard right, as Ivana said, and kind of, pivoted into business, and I absolutely love it. And I still do a lot of science. So I'm really happy to speak about that. I wouldn't say that I had always known that I wanted to go into business. So I was pre-med for a while, started doing research at a startup while I was an undergrad, just to kind of check that box. And realized, I was working as an EMT. I didn't like the patients. I liked the research. So definitely pivoted to switching to a PhD program, and luckily before I took the MCAT, so that was really good to avoid. Then, I ended up for grad school, they said, do a crazy rotation, and I met Oliver, and I thought, this is the craziest guy I've ever met. I should rotate with him. Like, I don't think you can get crazier. And it ended up being like the best lab to join for me, just because there's so much going on with metabolomics. You can put anything in the instrument, right? And you can apply it to any science, and it's this kind of like undiscovered, and so I just think it's such an exciting field. So yes, I did my PhD with Oliver, stayed as a postdoc, then a project scientist, and really was just kind of thinking, like, I hate writing. I like papers, they're great to write, but I'm really tired of this. And so I ended up actually meeting my current boss at a conference, and I wasn't really applying, and just started to have a conversation. I think I was like in charge of setting up the booth or something, and just kind of started. So I think that's my biggest advice, is have conversations with people, ask them what they do, what's it like, do you like your job, what does your job really entail. This is actually the second position I'll have had with Metabolon now in the last year. And if I, was applying for a strategic account manager, I don't know if I ever really would have. I didn't really know what it meant. So really what the job entails is meeting people, understanding kind of what they need, and then, would Metabolon services be a good fit for them? Talking about their science, what are their goals, what kind of samples, and then there's some kind of more business side, contracts, negotiation, which I really enjoy, things like that. So it's been a really, really fun job, and I'm really happy. I transitioned. I kind of always knew I probably wanted to leave academia, but didn't really know what that kind of first job would look like. So I think that's kind of the scariest jump. So happy to kind of address any questions on that. I mean, I heard resume being mentioned earlier. That was really critical. I think being professional, meeting people, having your LinkedIn kind of up to date, all of those things, talking to people at conferences. I would talk to everybody at conferences. So I think just the more you network, I know it's really scary to talk to people you don't know, but it gets easier at the, ASMS hospitality booth or something. But just don't be afraid to go out, be out there and talk to people. So.
Thanks so much, Megan. I do miss hospitality suites at ASMS.
Yeah.
Those are great.
A lot.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. Thank you. All great advice. And thank you so much for sharing some of your journey with us. Our next speaker is somebody I'm also very excited about, Mona El-Badawi Sidhu. She is also a former colleague, and she is now doing really good stuff at Amris. Mona, welcome, and please share a few moments to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Ivana. Thank you, Arpana, for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited. So similar to a couple other speakers today, I also went straight to industry right after finishing my undergrad. I did my undergrad at UC Davis, and I actually majored in animal science. I was pre-vet. I wanted to be a veterinarian. And then partway through, I decided, I don't want to be a veterinarian. I actually like doing research more so than, day-to-day activities at a vet clinic. So I jumped straight into industry, and I got a job in pharma. So I worked in the pharmaceutical industry and biotech industry for 8 years and absolutely loved it. But I think similar to what was either Jesse or Margaret said, there's only so far you can go. without a higher degree. I think now there might be less so, but there was definitely a glass ceiling at the time. Plus, I always knew that I wanted to get a higher degree. I just didn't know exactly what field to go back into after changing from pre-vet. So after 8 years in the field, I decided, okay, it's time. I also started a family during that time and had children. And then once my youngest started kindergarten, I said, okay, I'm now ready to get back and get work back on my career. So I went back to UC Davis. I joined Oliver Fien's lab. Megan and Arpana were in grad school with me, and Ivana was there as a postdoc. As Megan said, Oliver Fien's lab is a crazy place to be. But I'm so thankful and grateful because that's actually where I learned metabolomics. I was an analytical chemist before. I did natural product chemistry and formulation development for pharma, but I had not dived into metabolomics. And so it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about mass spec analysis and compound ID and everything you guys all know about metabolomics. And I did always know that I wanted to go back to industry. Academia, as Ivana said, is a great place to be, but you need to have, it's not the right fit for everybody, and it definitely wasn't where I wanted to stay. So I started at Amherst right after I finished my PhD. I started as an individual contributor, and then within just over a year, I now head my own team. And that's really what my career objective was from the very beginning. I wanted to lead a team and be the head of that group. So my team is bioanalytics. Amherst is a biosynthetic company. We make sustainable and good for you compound products. And the bioanalytics team focuses on metabolomics and proteomics. So that's where I am now.
Thank you so much, Mona, for sharing this. And this is also how I've always known you. You've always kind of had a laser focus on where to go, and that's a great thing to have. I cannot say it was like that for me, throughout all my lives before, but it did become super clear at some point, and reacting at that point is also kind of easy. Thank you to all of our speakers for introducing yourselves and sharing a bit of journey with you. We have questions coming in from our participants. We're a little over 50 people, and please, everybody, feel free to ask all the questions anonymously. You can unmute yourself and ask. Either way works. And we have also collected some questions from the community even before this event. So we are loaded with questions, and we're just gonna, get the ball rolling. So Rachel is asking a question, and maybe Mona, you can get a first glance at this one. What advice would you give to someone finishing a PhD or a postdoc, but has no previous industry experience at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely would recommend that you did some internships during your PhD, if possible. And if you're already wrapping up your PhD and that boat has sailed already, then try to do a postdoc. Postdoc is not for everybody as well, but if you don't have experience, it's a good way to kind of get your feet wet and kind of get something on your resume. And you can do a postdoc in industry as well. Also, one other thing about networking, Megan mentioned it, but everybody you come in contact with could be a potential contact, and you can build a professional relationship with them and reach out to those people as well, because you never really know where opportunities might lay, and reaching out to people that you've talked to in the past, it could be a huge jump starter.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you, Mona. And to the rest of our panelists, do you have anything to add to this question? What kind of advice would you give to somebody finishing up the PhD or a postdoc, but with no industry experience? Okay. Next question is from Biswa, and the question is for all of the panelists. I like this question a lot. So maybe Jess, you can start answering this question. Who's been your role model or role models who have helped shape your career, growth, or trajectory?
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, I've had a lot of role models, which has been really nice. And so I think it just kind of depends. Like I probably have maybe like a network of like 30 people that I'm chasing more or less for different things that I look up to. So like I had mentioned before, there's Laura Sanchez. And so she was what, like 5 years my senior. And she's a professor, but she's, really driven a lot of my success in a lot of ways. Then there's another professor who was at UCSF, Giselle Knudsen, who's actually now in industry. And I've definitely been, looking up to her and chasing her for a while, and she's done a lot, especially for me at Brightseed, because she had also transitioned from academia to industry, but was, coming from a professorship. And then she's also like a founding scientist at her company. And so that was like the perfect, at least for me, role model at Brightseed, because it was, that's almost exactly where I'd like to be. And so finding those types of people is really important. And I actually found her, she was the fourth member on my qualifying exam that just happened to, kind of shape my life just from that 3 hours on. So yeah, so those are kind of some of my two key people that I look up to.
Thanks, Jesse. Megan, role models that have shaped your career and trajectory.
Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of my former bosses have been, kind of people I consistently keep in touch with. I talk about Oliver. Oliver, I still see him, and he's like really fun to keep in touch with, and he always wants to help. I worked at a startup before. The founder for that company also was happy to help me. So I think the biggest thing I had to get over was like, it's okay to ask for help, and there's no stupid question, or there's no like, don't feel weird doing it. I have people reach out to me now, hey, I'm applying at this job. Do you know anyone? And, because I have a lot of accounts, I do, right? So I'm happy to, yeah, I know them. Let me, contact, I think this is the hiring manager. Let me see. Or your instrument vendor, they're really connected, right? They're selling an instrument to everybody you know that you might want to get a job at. And they're also really great. I mean, we had a lot of great female instrument vendors that I remember talking to and just kind of identifying as people like Val from SciEx, just picking their brain. How did you, move forward with your career? Can you give me any advice? I think it's really intimidating sometimes to ask because you think, oh, I'm just a PhD student, like they're busy, whatever. But we've been in your shoes and like, we really want to help too. It's kind of paying it forward. Someone helped us. And I think there's a lot of really like strong women metabolomics scientists that are really happy to help. I talk to Erin Baker a lot. She's another, professor scientist that I always like to chat with. So I just think, identifying these people you like and not being afraid to, ask for help or ask for advice is a great way. And they don't always have to be female, male role models. They don't have to be in your field, whatever. But just, asking somebody that, really has been there and kind of understands what you're going through to help you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much. Margaret, some of your heroes or role models that helped shape your career and career trajectory?
Yeah. So both my parents are also scientists, and I literally, some of the earliest memories I have of hearing sequencing, I remember were at the breakfast table when I was a little kid, and I remember hearing them say sequence, and I was like, that's awesome. To work every day and they're dealing with glitter and stuff and probably doing arts and crafts. That's definitely what I want to do. So yeah, I mean, I was really lucky to kind of be able to grow up with those types of conversations. And my mom is definitely one of my biggest role models. She recently retired, but she was in industry forever. Also, my sister is a scientist. So, I'm really lucky to kind of follow those big footsteps. I think beyond that, every step of my like academic and career journey so far, I've kind of been able to accumulate people that I love and trust and have supported me through the process. I have my undergraduate, the lab I did my undergraduate work in, Amy Ralston. She was the one that was really like, oh, if you don't want to go to grad school, don't do it, go to Illumina. And then when I got to Illumina, my mentor there was the one that encouraged me to go to grad school, and just every step along the way. I have kind of, much as everybody else described, kind of been able to build this network that even now I'll go back to Amy and I'll be like, Amy, what do I do?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Margaret, for sharing this. Yeah, science in the family. That's it. Almost, yeah, you almost didn't have a choice. Just kidding. It's really, really great. I mean, we all inspire. I mean, from get inspiration from our parents, and it's amazing that you've had that at home growing up. Mona, some of your heroes that have helped shape your career and trajectory.
Yeah, so for me, definitely parents. I knew, like I said before, before even going to work, that I wanted to get a PhD, or I wanted to get a higher degree. But really shaping it more specifically was when I was working, just seeing women that were in high positions and still having a family, and I knew that's something that spoke to me, that it could be done. And so there was like various people that I would talk to along the way. How did you guys do it? How do you balance work and life? And just knowing that it was achievable, that's tremendous. And then in graduate school, you have to build a support network. Your fellow graduate students, postdocs, the people you're collaborating with. You need to identify with people that you can really talk to and that connect with, and build that support network. So there's a lot of people. You can't just name one or two that have helped. Everyone kind of touches a little bit along the way.
Yeah, I love that. Nobody makes it through the grad school alive alone, and it takes a village. So I love that comment. Thank you, Mona. Yeah, we have several other questions. So since we touched up on, I'm not going to go in order on these questions, but since we did talk about education actually here a lot, Kehinda has a question about recommendations for further education. Okay, so what maybe Margaret, you can start by giving some thoughts around what would you recommend to somebody?
I have like a specific, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to know specifically, are there recommendations for education for someone like myself who wants to explore the intersection of like the plant metabolome and the human anatomy, metabolomics, especially considering, like I'm someone who was not only pre-med, I did the MCAT 3 times, and then I went to med school for like a year. So like I'm schooled out, so, but like you said, I'm at that glass ceiling, but I want to know this. I want to get better. So what do you all think? Like, is there a degree for that intersection?
Yeah, thanks, Kehinda. Great question. Maybe Margaret, do you want to take a...
So I actually would defer to others that actually, I think there's people on the panel here that are experts in metabolomics. I'm still very much consider myself on the genomics, kind of shuffling towards the proteomics side. So, but I totally understand the school burnout. And I also congratulate you on saying this is not for me.
So true. Thank you, Margaret. Yeah. Mona, do you want to try and answer this question?
So are you asking like what to major in, or what your major can be? I would recommend just going on to different, identify what schools or cities you're interested in looking at, and then perusing through their majors, and maybe something will stand out. I mean, there's plant biology, and then you can find a lab that might be that focuses on omics, and you can bring that in. For example, I was actually a pharmacology and toxicology major, but none of the professors that were in that graduate group really spoke to me. I didn't have a connection with what their lab was researching. So I actually reached out to Oliver myself and said, he wasn't part of my group, but I said, hey, I want to do something mass spec related. I like the focus of your lab. Can you join my program so I can join your lab? So you can also do something like this.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's great. Great approach. So true. You can kind of tailor, right, what other lab is doing into what to kind of marry your wishes. That's a great advice. Jessie, do you want to try answering this one as well?
Yeah, I'd say there's a ton of like different programs that are pretty flexible. And so it's really in, trying to find a place that maybe has like a history of having somewhat flexible, if you what you want, but that you could tailor it to what you want to do. Like for my PhD, they had never looked at marine mammals before I started there. And so there's a lot of play. So you can make a graduate degree kind of what you want to make it. I would also say it is a long, arduous process though. And so it is important that you do really want to do it. But there is also a fallback. Like you can go start a PhD program and see if you can tailor it exactly what you want, and you can get a master's and you will be in a great shape for that. So for me, I kind of feel like it's a win-win. I loved grad school. I came in thinking I was going to do polymer chemistry though, and I came out doing natural products. And so you never know, but I think it's a great opportunity, and there's a lot of programs that are super flexible.
Yeah, can I add one more thing? Similar, there's a lot of interdisciplinary programs. So look for programs that connect different fields.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you, everybody, for answering that. Megan, do you also want to add to this, or?
Sure. Yeah. So I was the token biologist for our lab. I always felt like I was the biochemistry, molecular, cellular, developmental was my group. So it's very broad. As Mona said, interdisciplinary was great, right? I had a lot of flexibility. And I joined, they asked me, it was always the fun thing, like, can you draw this reaction? I was like, you guys are hilarious. I have no idea. But I've taken anatomy, physiology, and all the biology I could need to tell you all about that. So I think just like really recognizing that you kind of have this cross-disciplinary view, and you don't have to like fit yourself in a square box. You know, there's a lot of really flexibility. And if you join a large lab, there's a lot to do. So yeah, I can run the instrument, but I also got to focus on writing papers and interpretation. So you can kind of like make a niche for yourself. It's good to be cross-trained, and then you can kind of specialize. I also totally agree with Jesse. You know, PhD is painful. That's the P, I think, part of that. So, you know, being honest with yourself, like maybe this isn't what I need. I mean, we all have a friend we used to work with too, that's another, you know, image of success at a commercial company that has a master's, right? And she's leading a group. So, you know, I think it's really just kind of being flexible and being realistic with yourself. It helped me to realize that they pay you to get a PhD for some programs. So that kind of helped with some of my burnout. You know, I had a stipend. I didn't have to take loans. So that makes you a little less stressed. But yeah, I think just, you know, not accepting no and joining a lab where your PI supports that is really important.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you, everybody, for taking this one. I'll be going through the next blocks of questions, just asking like one of the two panelists to answer them, just to go through as many questions as possible in the rest of the time we have. So Megan, maybe you want to take this one. Susan is asking, several of you said that you didn't want to become professors. What it is about faculty position that is unattractive? What is your—
I saw this question. Happy to address this one. So I love professors. One of my best friends is a professor. He's on this phone, or he's on this meeting. So I definitely, you know, nothing against professors, right? But I knew it wasn't for me. I think it's just being really realistic. Look at your PI. I mean, look at the hours they're working. Is the things that is the best part of their job that they're the most excited about? Is that what gets you excited? Are you okay with that kind of work-life balance? It's such a rewarding job. You have so much flexibility, but you also have a lot of pressure, right? Getting grants is not easy, and it's challenging, especially metabolomics, right? You got to buy an instrument. You got, you know, there's a lot of kind of those types of things. I also mentioned I didn't like patients. I also don't really like teaching. So, you know, that also prevented me. So I think just being like really realistic with yourself and like trying what you want to do, right? So I said, do I want to be a professor? I should teach and write grants, right? And do the research. So I think you should kind of try it before you buy it. Not that it's not an amazing, you know, field, and you can be, I was a project scientist, right? So I was under a professor. I wasn't a professor, but I could write grants. I could be a PI, right? I could do all this. So, you know, you can be in academia and not have that kind of professor burden. You know, and we have people from our group that are still part of that. So I think it's just, you know, understanding what is it you like, right? Because this is your career.
Thank you, Megan, for answering this one. Next question, I'm gonna ask Margaret to try this question, but totally fine if you know, if you want to defer to somebody else. It's from Kiati. A majority of bioinformatics focuses are in genomics. Do you have any advice for biomedical informatics PhD students focusing their work in mass spectrometry? And here they specifically mentioned metabolomics, but it could be proteomics as well, for example. So what is your take on this? Do you have any advice for students who are who are not bioinformaticians in genomics in your experiences?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this depends on, so Kiati, I don't know where you are in your PhD, if you're applying or what school you're at, but and I agree. So at UC San Diego, I would agree a lot of people were thinking about genomics, but I also tend to think that this genomics tends to be its own sphere, and proteomics and on proteomics, metabolomics also tends to be its own sphere, largely because they're kind of dealing in two sequencing technologies. I think if you could find, so if you're already in a lab that's doing genomics and you're thinking, oh, I really would love to do like mass spec and metabolomics, I think that first, like one thing you could do is try to bring a collaborator in. If you could try to, maybe find a co-advisor or collaborate with another lab and think about a way that you can incorporate that into your current research. Or if you're more early on in your career, those labs do exist. I mean, if you have the skill set of a bioinformatician, everybody, you can be in any lab, right? So like Megan described, she was the biologist of her lab. You sort of become the thinker of this new space, and you actually bring a lot to the table in that lab, and you have a lot of opportunity to contribute and write papers and do a lot of work. So having this different, diverse interest is actually really useful for a lab. Yeah, no, I think it's very possible, but that would be my advice. If you're later on, get a collaborator. If you're early on, either find a lab that the PI is open to letting you kind of explore a little, or find a lab. I mean, there are labs that they are doing bioinformatics in the metabolomic space.
Yeah, great answer, great advice, Margaret. I really like that. I do think also like you that there are a lot of things that we have and possess are transferable skills, and the application, yeah, if it's proteomics, genomics, or metabolomics, you need to learn that domain knowledge, but at the end of the day, it's transferable and skill set. Thank you for handling that one. Mona, we have a question from Shen. I really like this question. What really exceeded or fell short from your expectations after stepping into corporate from academic?
Nothing really fell short. I knew what to expect because, as I said, I worked in industry for quite some time before coming back to academia. I guess what exceeded my expectations is the level of collaboration that's also possible in industry. You talk about a lot of partnerships and collaborations when you're in academia, but it also exists in industry, and the sharing of knowledge. It's very open in academia, but it can also be like that in industry, especially at Amherst. The culture here is that we're all scientists working together. It's all a collaborative effort, and I really enjoy that.
Thanks, Mona. Jesse, do you want to comment what exceeded or some of the things that fell short in terms of expectations when you transitioned from academia to industry?
Yeah, so I'd say as far as things that maybe like fell short, I'd say so with my bachelor's, I'd say more so, especially, and even now I'd say like the mentorship aspect isn't as obvious. Not that it isn't there in industry, but when you're in academia, like there's professors where part of their job is cut out specifically for mentorship. Like senior grad students are supposed to mentor undergrads and younger graduate students. So that's kind of embedded in the structure. And when you're in industry, it's definitely still there, but it's a little bit more subtle, and it can feel a little bit more difficult to ask for those things. I've still definitely got it, and I don't feel like I'm getting any less. It's just not as obvious maybe in your faces as it is in academia.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you, Jesse. And Megan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I think, mentorship definitely, and I think too, like, avenues for growth, right? It's very clear, when you're a grad student, you're going to be a postdoc. And then, I feel like the trajectory is very like linear. You kind of know where you're going. And whereas in industry, you can go, pivot a couple different ways. So I think that was something that, and asking for development and making sure you're going to a place where development is important, if that's important to you, would be something. And then I also feel like, you definitely, I'm trying to think of the cons because I really like it. But, I think there is some cons on just kind of navigating how you're going to move forward in your career and who is that person that, mentors you. Obviously, it's going to be your direct supervisor, but you probably want kind of a tertiary person as well. So understanding that growth. And then, it's kind of not your job to be curious and try new things anymore, right? You really do have a job, right? It's a very clearly defined expectations. You know what you have to do every day. So, meeting those goals and then also meeting your own personal development goals, I think would be something to navigate.
Thank you, Megan. Margaret, we have another question.
I was going to say, can I take a whack at that last question as well?
Yes, of course.
Because I feel like I'm sort of new back to the industry game because I've only been at SEER for about, I guess, 7 months now. But either way, one of my great fears or concerns when I went from academia to industry was this idea that I was now entering a world where everybody was an expert. I was now an expert, and now I would be amongst all these other people in industry that knew exactly what they were doing. They've been in industry forever. And I guess what both exceeded and didn't quite meet my expectations is the realization that everybody is super smart around you, but we're all kind of on the bleeding edge of what we know. So everybody is sort of making it up and figuring it out as they go along. So I think that was kind of the biggest almost surprise when I came to industry is we're sitting in these rooms and we all kind of have this foundational understanding of proteomics. But we're all just kind of like, well, what if we did this? And it's fun.
Thank you, Margaret. I have another question I would like you to try to answer. Did you find that being a woman either positively or negatively impacted your job search, especially in bioinformatics, since that's a male-dominated field or industry? What are your thoughts around that?
It's hard to say. I found even looking for a job during a pandemic. I actually don't know what the typical market is like, right? Because my first time applying for a job after getting my PhD was during a pandemic, but I was getting interviews. I made it pretty far in a few of them. The fact that I was a woman obviously didn't come up, but now that I'm actually working for a company and I'm sitting on the other side of the table, I think we try. I think we do our best to see everybody equally. I think in general, to be in bioinformatics means that there's fewer women in general. I think like in my program, for example, it's like 25% of students were women. But yeah, I mean, that's something. So as I'm advancing in my career, that's actually something I really care about, increasing diversity in our company. And I'm in the data science group, and I think, yeah, I think currently I'm the only woman, but that is something that I'm actively trying to change.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking this one. Jessie, do you mind answering this one? As a female scientist, what has been the most significant barrier in your career?
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's sort of kind of navigating like the confidence levels a little bit in between, like how I might present myself and maybe say how my husband might present himself. And so how that comes across in an interview. I know that's something that I'm always trying to work on to make sure that, I come across as confident and competent, whereas like I know a lot of women will kind of they'll just show you the tip of the iceberg instead of saying like, oh yeah, absolutely. Even if it's a stretch goal, like I can definitely do that. And so I know my husband has actually literally coached me and been like, no, you are awesome. You can do this. And that's really kind of changed how I like do interviews, try to change how I like, discuss things. And I've also noticed like at Brightseed too, which has helped me, like in some of the interview processes, I've noticed like that's been brought up. Like we've discussed that as we discuss interviews, like, hey, this, when we're looking at these candidates, we should keep in mind these types of biases. Like it is common, like it seems like this person might be like under delivering what their actual skill set might be.
Yeah, I really like your answer, Jessie. I too have a husband that is as supportive and as real as yours is. And I also like the fact that you brought up confidence. I somehow feel that it's expected to ooze confidence at all times. And I know for myself personally, I have this, tone and the posture when I'm presenting something to, give as much confidence as I can, but of course not being truthful about what you are presenting. But even if you are insecure, providing kind of temporary solutions or long-term solutions also provides kind of a confidence so that's I really enjoyed your answer. Thanks, Jessie. We are 5 minutes away from our ending.
There was one question from the audience. Kinde, I think you had your hand up. You got it.
Sorry, I didn't know how to do the button thing. Follow up about the women thing. How do you all, as women with an X, love the inclusion? How do you navigate the crashing of the professional world of science, right? And the social realities of what's happening to women, trans, Black, everything, marginalization. Because those worlds are coming together. So as professional women scientists, how do you navigate that world? Are your jobs acknowledging it? Or you just act like nothing's happening? How do you navigate that collision right now?
Great question. Thank you, Kehinde. Maybe Megan, do you wanna try?
Sure. Yeah. So I think first, obviously with, I don't want to speak to this. I know there are a lot of people on the call and colleagues of mine that probably have, some more relevant experiences to your question, but, I can speak from being a woman. And I think that it's important to work for a company that shares the same values with you. They're not going to come up every day, but they definitely will come up, right? And sometimes I am the only woman in the room for the Zoom, for my kind of internal team, right? So I think it's important to, make sure that your manager and your company as a whole has ideas that you can get behind and you can support. And I definitely think that's something you should ask during the interview. And if something you encounter, you shouldn't put up with it and don't go to work for that place. And I really, that was something, for me that was really important is, I work for a man. What is that really like? It's always in the back of your head. It's probably going to be fine, but, you do think about it. And so I do think that's something you should be vocal about and ask in an appropriate, and reasonable way. But in my experience, I think it's kind of starting to turn the tables. I mean, we had mostly female grad students in our lab. I think we're really kind of shifting to have a more diverse, kind of outlook in science. So I think you shouldn't let those things be the first thing you think of. I think the first thing you should think of is, what kind of science am I going to do and get excited that way. And, so that would be my recommendation, but definitely work for a place that you feel good at. I mean, there's no reason not to. There's plenty of jobs. So.
Thank you, Megan. To wrap things up here, I would like to thank all of our panelists, for taking their time and sharing some of their journey with us. We are so thankful for, to have you guys here. And we would also like to say, in case people are not, reading the chat boxes, every company that has, that was presented here today, Metabolon, Seer, Amris, and Brightseed, everybody's hiring. So just check out either the chat boxes. There's training, traineeships or trainee positions open, scientists, all sorts of roles. So make sure to check the chat box. Otherwise, on LinkedIn or the company's website is always a good place to start. All of the panelists have said that they would be happy to connect with the community and do, outside of this mentorship. So please feel free to either email us at omics or check everybody on LinkedIn. Everybody's responsive and supportive of this community, and helping in any way they can. And yeah, that being said, I will just share some of the I guess the contact information. You can follow us on Twitter. You can. We now have a website. That's kind of exciting and new. Our omics board member Stephanie, she did most of the heavy lifting for this, and we are very excited to be live. So please check out our website, omicsmetabolomics.org. And you can also email us with any questions or suggestions. Make sure to check the website for the upcoming events. And yeah, we are just very, very thankful to have the growing community here. And thank you for participating actively, passively, whatever you did today. And again, thank you so much for, to all of our speakers for being here. Hope everybody has a great rest of the day. And to be respectful of time, we're gonna wrap this up, guys. So thank you, everybody. Great seeing everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.